All right, class, today we're going to learn about our sun, the closest star to us, the one we've studied the most and we have the most information about. So you're going to be taking notes on this note sheet right here. You'll start on this side and you'll also fill out the back side when we look at features of the sun. So here we go. Our sun is 93 million miles away, which is the average, and it takes 8 minutes for our light from the sun to reach us, which is really weird because if our sun suddenly winked out, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes. It's about 5 billion years old, which is the estimate to be about half of its life. And it's actually what's called a yellow dwarf based on the wavelength of light it gives off and its size. It's almost a sphere. It is 1.4 million kilometers across. Basically, what that means is we could fit 1 million Earths inside of it. It's big. What does it do? Why is it important? Holy cow, it makes our weather, it makes our climate. It drives the biological food chains through a little thing called photosynthesis. It does control our ocean currents and also our water cycle. So the sun's important for a lot of reasons to us. Make sure you get all those down. Some other stuff about the sun. Holy cow. Let's see, I told you some of these things. It does have a super strong magnetic field that leads to a lot of the features that we're going to talk about next. It takes up almost all of the mass of our entire solar system is in the sun. It does spin. It's really hot in the core, and it's still pretty hot in the sunspots. And when it gets starts doing helium fusion, it's going to expand so far that the Earth would actually be inside the sun at that point. Crazy. All right, so what are some of the features of the sun? Here's our diagram of the sun. Let's take a look at some of the different structures in the sun here that we want to talk about. First off is what's called a solar flare. This is when the sun emits a large amount of radiation from the surface. It could emit enough particles and radiation to equal the mass of Mount Everest. And this happens with the magnetic field lines. They sometimes get twisted and twisted and twisted till they snap. And when they snap, they release this energy. You can see it in the animation here. And that is can have a negative effect on the Earth. This radiation coming to the Earth can cause power outages and auroras and various things, which we already talked about when we talk about the Earth's magnetic field, which is what generally protects us from the sun's radiation. So the second feature on the surface of the sun is the prominence. This is where superheated particles and gases, they zoom off the surface, but the gravity of the sun pulls it back, so it makes an arch. These arches you can fit like an Earth or two underneath. So these are pretty huge objects. Next up is a sunspot. These are cooler regions on the surface of the sun. They seem to happen in an 11-year cycle. Not 100% certain why. They must have something to do with the magnetic field of the sun. Scientists just have observed that 11-year cycle where they reach a maximum and then they go down to a minimum within 11 years. And the reason why that's important is because when the sunspots go through this cycle of a maximum and a minimum, so do our solar flares. So we have more solar flares when there's more sunspots and less solar flares when there's less sunspots. So it's important for us to track that because solar flares can have an effect on us on Earth and a lot of the objects that we have in orbit around the Earth, like astronauts and satellites. The last one is the solar wind. Solar wind is these charged particles that the sun is always giving off, 360 degrees, 24/7. It's always giving off these particles in all directions. So these are the structure of the sun. You have a worksheet about the structure of the sun that you're going to do. You're going to make a drawing and be very similar to this on that. You're going to label some parts. You're going to answer some questions. Your notes will be extremely valuable in you doing this. Good luck.